How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies is Thailand's entry for Best International Feature at the 2025 Oscars. I'm here with director and co-writer Pat Boonnitipat. And Pat, this is your feature directorial debut. You've done, some TV in the past, but what was it like to take on your first feature?
Actually, I've always been wanting to direct a feature film. Actually, because directing a TV series is actually very difficult for me. It's a really long thing, and you have to think about a too long for me story. So when I have chance to direct first feature film, I just grab it. Yeah.
Talk about this grandmother-grandson dynamic of the film and how you wanted to explore that, because it starts off a little bit sinister, like we feel like he's coming in for the wrong reasons into this relationship, but it becomes a very heartwarming film. So talk about that dynamic.
So actually, the genesis of the script came in by the producer. It was started by my script writer. He wrote something about his grandmother, and I read that, and I find it very resonating with my own grandmother, who is now 92, and she's still living. So I find a lot of common thing that would like to put in the script, and we took about 2 years to develop the script, and actually the process of writing is basically about me and my writer. We sit together and then we just throw in our own stories about our family members, about what in what way does your grandma scold you, and usually it's always in Chinese. So we find that what is funny and what tend to make us feel or miss somebody, we tend to put it in the script, and then we try our best to arrange it. So it's about process of throwing in ideas and arrange the idea. And then we found that because it took 2 years of writing the script, about half half of the way, we found that it's all about family. I mean, it's all about relationship. So we tried, and it's not just about the grandson and the grandmother. It's actually about all those characters, about the mother, the uncle, everybody. They are also the children of the grandmother. So all this dynamic affects each other, and we find that it is really interesting to make a movie that no one is a villain, and it's very difficult to tell that who did something good or bad, because when it comes down to your own family, you try your best to understand them, even it's too hard to understand. So that became like the core direction of the movie.
And one of my favorite things I read about the making of this film is that the actress who plays Amma, the grandmother, this is her feature film debut. At this age, and she won that part out over 100 actresses were auditioning for. What made you choose her? What was so perfect about her for this role in her first movie at that age?
Because we because the script is about everyday life. It's not about any big thing. It's just two people living their lives. So I really want the acting to be natural. And like the ideal way to be natural is to find someone who never act. So we try to find someone who never act, and we came across her accidentally, because she used to play in a very small role for a music video. She would just stand there and start smoking cigarettes the whole music video. She didn't speak a word, and I find her appearance is quite attractive and sweet. So we call her in, and we tape her, and when I see her play, she didn't have any preconcept of acting. She doesn't know how to act. So she just have to believe the story, and when she believes the story, she just immersed in it, and she becomes that actor or actress she's playing. And I find that is her gift, and it's very, very charming.
And there's so much chemistry between her and all of the family members. Um, But then how did you decide on your lead for who would play M? Because he's a young rising star. He's also a pop star. So what was it like to work with him and bring him on as the lead of this film?
It's he's very famous here in Thailand. So he has a lot of jobs. He has to be a singer, he has to be a pop star, and he has to be like TV actors. So I tried to, but he's very dedicated to the project. He read the script and he liked it very much. So he actually understood the direction that we are going, that we just didn't want him to like really act the way he did before. We just want him to be in the scene, just be present in the scene, like the grandmother. So we spent like half a year doing acting workshops with him. But mostly we don't do scenes, we don't rehearse scenes. We just sit together and we just do some like activity that make touch him and then make him be in the present of the feeling of the touch. So we just practice this. So when we go on the shoot, so by the time we were shooting, he was really relaxed and didn't have any expectation of how he should act or how he should cry here and this and that. And it turned out to work pretty well with him and also me. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it worked very well. Can you also talk about the shooting location and the production design? Like where were you filming this and how did you want to bring, this world to audiences because it feels like we're right there and like in the markets and the cemetery is very beautiful. Talk about those different places that you filmed.
Okay, we mostly film in Bangkok, and it's like a less well-known Chinatown, and it has this train just right just cut right through the middle of the market, and we find that very beautiful. So we wanted to film there. Most of the film was filmed there. Uh, so if you have a chance to be in Bangkok or in Thailand, you will find that it's very messy. It's very messy and it's also very beautiful. So we try to like preserve it that way. We try not to we try if like the setting of the grandma's house, we we don't really work on references. We only do work from the memory of our crew. From what I mean is that like for our art department, he would just read the script and he would thought about his mother. So I asked him about what does his mother's house look like where he grew up, and he told me, and I said, oh, that's fit perfect for the film. So he tried to set the house depend based on his mother's house that he had in his memory, and we try to do this with every department, with the cinematography, with the costume designing. So I think the process itself of bringing out the memory of each one of the crew, somehow also the location manager somehow like put together and reflect the I would say the identity of the yeah of the film, and also of the place that we all lived in.
It's beautiful just to look at everything. And what would you say was the biggest lesson you took away from filming on this first feature film of yours?
I think it would be that you have to trust your crew so much. You have to choose the crew that you trust, and you have to really trust them and really see the strength that they have and try. And I try my best to encourage them to do what they're really good at instead of putting my thought to them. And yeah, I find that it worked out really well with that process.
Yeah. Well, Pat, congratulations once again. It's a beautiful film, and thanks for speaking with Gold Derby today.
Thank you so much.
The Last Journey is Sweden's entry for Best International Film at the 2025 Oscars. I'm here with directors Filip Hammar and Fredrik Wilkingsson, and it's a personal story because, Filip, this is a documentary about a big trip you wanted to take with your 80-year-old father. How did you know this had to be a film?
Well, I didn't know that at all. As you point out, I mean, first it was just a trip without cameras. That was what I planned. But then I spoke to Fredrik, and we've been friends forever. And we just talked about this trip, and Fredrik knows my dad since way back. But then for some reason, I don't really remember why, but we started talking about maybe this also could be turned into a pretty good film. So
but it's not also any old trip. This is like Filip wanted to take this trip with his father because his father, after retirement, went into a depression and just basically sits at home. So Filip thought that this trip, going through Europe to the south of France, going to places they've always gone to that Filip's dad cherishes, maybe that could give him the spark of life back. It was almost like an experiment. And when Filip started talking to me about that, it felt cinematic. Filip wanted to buy an old car. He found some old audio tapes that they had, like an audio diary from the 80s. I started listening to that. There were several cinematic elements that felt, if we can film this without getting in the way of Filip's dad's experience, maybe there is something that's relatable there.
yeah, it's like three people in the film, but the actually the car and the country is just as expensive, important, and my mom as well. So it's that was the start of it.
And talk about, pulling everything together, and because your dad wasn't really on board for this. I mean, he didn't seem that excited, and you were really pushing him, like, come on, Dad, and then the first day, accident happens, and it really puts a setback in everything. What was it like for you just trying to convince him to go on this journey with you?
I think depression also comes with, apathy and also fear, usually, So my dad didn't, it's always when you're depressed and you're sitting in your, in his case, this Belgium recliner in my house, in the house where I grew up, he rather says no than yes. So
it's a very limited comfort zone, right? I think that's typical of depression.
So then me and, me more than Fredrik, because of course it's kind of awkward, or also Fredrik doesn't want to cross any line and force his friend's dad to do things. But I went first and foremost, I went through my mom, because she's the one spending all the time with him. So she says, he needs this, Filip. He needs this, Filip. And then it was like an successful operation by me and my mom. But I have to stress, of course, we wouldn't have done this if my dad didn't, appreciate it as well. It's just hard to get him going. Once he's in something, once he's doing something, he enjoys it.
Yeah. And talk about how important it was to find these sort of audio diaries that he had kept, and Super 8 footage. That brought a lot to the film and gives us more of a look at what he was like in his youth. And it's interesting to see. One of my favorite lines in the movie is when you get to France, he says, France is exactly the same. The only thing that changed is me, which I thought struck a chord with me. But what was it like finding those tapes?
Yeah, I mean, I found them, but then, to me, it was also Fredrik's eyes on them, I guess, or ears, because to me, it's like, this is insane. It's not, there's something poetic to these tapes and what he says, but it's a lot of just, we had dinner yesterday, that was 70 francs, and, whatever, some words, and he translated into French. It was like the whole, when the film is, contains, there's many components.
Yeah, when I heard about these tapes, it's almost like you feel like Indiana Jones. You're gonna go for the treasure. You're gonna find family secrets. Something will be revealed. But to me, when I started listening to it, first, I was almost disappointed. But then there is a poetry to the whole everyday aspect of a family with limited means going to France and just like journalizing, whatever you want to call it, everything. Like dinner was this, parking cost 3 francs, a little expensive, but still. And there was something so relatable about that. This is a very typical family, I think.
Yeah, I think just in general, the whole film, I mean, obviously it's a very personal story, but a lot of us either have aging parents and maybe parents that, can handle retirement that well, or, you're going to face it sooner or later. So, I mean, there are so many, I think, speaking of components in this film that are relatable. I mean, the fear of someone getting old and also not wanting to accept that, but also each family's little story, So this could be, I mean, my dad is eccentric, I have to say that. Otherwise, he wouldn't, we wouldn't probably have made this film, but still, I think every family have their story, and remember those moments where, your parents were at their happiest, or when you were at your happiest.
But it's also funny. I mean, how did you balance the hearts and the humor so well? Like, what was the key there that you wanted to be able to show both sides?
I think it was for us very important to have that. Sometimes even in the same scene, there will be laughter and there will be almost like tears or at least strong emotions. Because to me, those feelings, nothing new to this, of course, but they elevate each other and complement each other. And I think a lot of documentaries, this is about a heavy topic like aging and decay, apathy and ultimately death. But life is also like gallows humor and different ways of dealing with it. And we wanted that to be reflected in the film. So it doesn't just become one thing, because some documentaries have a weakness because they're so serious all the time. And of course, sometimes the topics, it demands that. But we felt this is in line with who this family is and who Filip's dad is.
And comedy is always there, and humor. Where, even in a war zone, there is humor, and I understand that it might be hard to sort of integrate that in a film about, a Ukrainian city that it's bombed. But for us, there was like no choice really. And like Fredrik sometimes calls this film genre dissolving. It sounds very pretentious, but I think, it's different in that case.
It is a documentary, but it plays a little bit like a feature, we think. And that's the reaction we get from people.
Yeah. And you had said you wanted to mess with reality a little bit. What was the most fun way you messed with reality? Like when you think back on it, what was the most fun?
Well, I think also because this film is about my dad, but it's also about a Francophile. I mean, all through my life, he stopped reading Swedish books 60 years ago. And, when I grew up, we only had French food at home, and he always romanticized France. But we wanted to do, we wanted him to find his spark for life again by sort of re-experiencing stuff he has loved experiencing his life. But those things had to be different than, I had dinner at the sunset at a beach, no. But my dad, for instance, he romanticizes, traffic jams and how French people scream at each other in traffic, road rage, whatever. So we decided like, okay, maybe it would be fun to stage one of these, situations of a fight just on the street. Me and my dad are sitting at a restaurant, and then, people start fighting with each other, like with a French temper, one's just light up a cigarette and all of that. The audience knows that that's staged, but it
is for the purpose of him being
smiling.
Being reminded of things that have made life worth living for him. So we felt, if we're honest to the audience, that this is what we do for him, then it's fine to stage a lot of things. I mean, our favorite filmmaker is Herzog. When it comes to his documentaries, he's very open about, okay, this is a staged thing. I mean, the movie The Act of Killing is basically one big staging. So to us, that's not a problem at all. And we felt it elevated the story.
But also whatever it takes to make my dad happy, And I think so. This is almost, to me, it's like, oh, this is a new form of therapy. You stage things. I mean, there are even elderly homes I read now in Denmark where, they just try to, people suffer from dementia, where they put, stuff from their past, or they like create maybe the garage of where they lived and so forth. So it's something about it, because that was probably my dad's happiest moment. And it might sound weird and ridiculous, but he really loves, the French temper in traffic. Not everyone does.
And what did you think of the film? What did your parents think of the film when they saw it?
I asked Filip 2 weeks before the premiere, I said, you have shown the film to your parents now, right? And I hear when he starts formulating a white lie, it becomes like a word salad from him. Like he starts evading the topic. So I just called.
Because we're friends, you know that.
Yeah. So I called Filip's mom and I said, has he shown the film? No. So I just took my laptop, drove for 2 hours from Stockholm to this small town, showed it to them. And it was beautiful because they just turned to me after 90 minutes and said, wow, this really has class. Because I think they were surprised by maybe the ambition of it and the bigness of it. And we wanted it to look cinematic and beautiful and a lot of music. And so it was very comforting for us that they both loved it.
Because this is a celebration, I mean, not only to my dad, but it's a celebration to, everyday people, all the heroes that are out there. In my case, my dad is a teacher, you know, they could have any job. And I think for that reason, we wanted to have this elevated touch to the film where it's like, it almost, when you see it, when you listen to the score or whatever, it, you know, it's almost like, are they making a you know, a documentary about, you know, Jimmy Carter, whoever, maybe not, but it's a historical figure who hasn't happened. But to us, it's just this really short, regular, good human being from this small town. But he could be a lot of people. And that I think also people can relate to. You start thinking about the, you know, it doesn't have to be your dad or your mom, but people that have been nice to you and meant something to you.
Yeah. Well, Philip and Fredrik, congratulations. It's such a funny and moving movie, and good luck with everything. And thanks for chatting with Gold Derby today.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
a lot.
Kiran Rao directs, and Aamir Khan is a producer of India's selection for this year's Best International Feature at the Oscars, Lost Ladies. Aamir, I believe you discovered the script or came across it first and then decided Kiran would be perfect to direct. So talk about that discovery and deciding why she was the perfect director.
Well, I was a jury in a script competition back home in India. And one of the scripts I read was the script of Lost Ladies, and I just fell in love with it. It's such a beautiful story. It moves you, it makes you laugh, it's funny, touches you in so many ways, and it talks about such important things. So I just fell in love with it, and I knew I wanted to make it. And then I also knew that Kiran has been looking for a film to direct for a while, and she's been toying with a number of scripts that she's working on, but had not committed to any one of them. And so I told her, listen, I think I've found something for you, and I hope you like it. I felt she's the right director for this because I felt that while the story itself is very dramatic and quite absurd in what's happening, I felt that the person making the film has to play it really real. And Kiran's ability as a director to just get it right and her honesty as a director is what I felt this film required. And so I'm glad she took it on.
And Kiran, this film is about sort of a wife swap, accidentally. These women are wearing veils, they're newlyweds on the train, and they accidentally get switched and go to the wrong town. And talk about, as a director, you know, what that was like to direct a comedy in this way. And is that a different kind of or bigger challenge than something that's more dramatic?
It was exciting for me because through this sort of simple comedy of errors, mistaken identity story, there was so many things that we could explore. Sort of entrenched patriarchy, the way these girls have been conditioned to be a certain way. One of them has never left home, and sort of the terrors of the outside world that sometimes girls are warned about, was actually an opportunity to explore the wonders actually of the world, really. What could happen if women are given agency and autonomy and, allowed to have freedoms. So doing it through a comedy was the best way we thought to do it. And the challenge really was to keep the comedy at the front of it, keep it really light, have the plot full of twists, and make this a really fun journey with all these really oddball characters that they encounter, and keep all the sort of themes that we wanted to address and issues that we wanted to talk about very much through plot and through situations rather than dialogue. So the challenge really was to cast the right actors. We were shooting during COVID and casting during COVID. So it was, those were the bigger challenges than, doing anything with comedy. But really, once we had the right cast, we were good to go.
What was the most difficult thing to cast? Was it the lead women or the supporting cast? Because you have to get you have to get it right. They have to be funny.
Yeah, so once actually I had the freedom, Aamir, as a producer, actually really supported the idea that we didn't need stars. We would go with unknown actors. We really cast through the internet far and wide, like all over India. We had tapes from everywhere. And the trick was, of course, the two lead girls needed to be roughly the same height and build so that they could it would be imaginable that someone would go home with the wrong woman, and and the men equally so. They had to be roughly the same height and build. Other than the two physical kind of requirements, one of the lead girls doesn't speak for the first, almost 10 minutes of the film. So it was really important that she just absolutely looked the part. And, her face and eyes and, essentially expressions did the work. So casting that was actually very tricky because we needed someone with that innocence, with, a sense of vulnerability, but still this questioning mind that she has. She's a really, she's a young person who's curious, but has been told that this is how good girls are, So casting the two girls was actually one of the trickiest things to do. And in fact, among the two men, the antagonist husband, actually, there was someone else cast, but because of COVID, this actor who's playing the part was cast, literally 2 days before, or one day before we shot. Yeah.
You do poke fun at some cultural things, and I'm wondering, like, how far do you know, like, how to push the envelope? Like, how far do you want to seep into that? I mean, there's one scene where she wants to take her picture in her veil, like, so people can find out who she is, and he's like, this is a camera, it's not an X-ray machine. I mean, come on. So, like, how far do you want to push those buttons, and are you worried about offending people? Because India is a very diverse place.
Well, we were conscious when we were using the veil that it could be taken either way. And for us, it was really important to look at it almost as a tool of both revealing and concealing, because one of the characters uses it to her advantage, like you said in that scene. She doesn't want to be discovered, and the other kind of, it's an impediment, it's a constraint, and she gets lost because of it. So we knew that that humor really would help us get through things that could be sticky. I feel humor as again, as a tool, is very disarming. It kind of makes you very open to new ideas. While you're laughing, while everyone's laughing, you can slowly slide the knife in. And that actually is the power, I feel, of comedy. Things that you would otherwise be strongly opposed to if you were in a conversation. When you see it as a joke, you kind of would be much more open to laughing at it, and therefore be more open-minded about it. So that's what we relied on. We wanted to use comedy to kind of soften the edges, in a way, of all the tricky things that we were going to address.
And Aamir, you two have been partners on so many projects in the past. What makes this different, and you've been selected for to represent India for the Oscars before as well. So what has this process been like for you, and how does this film differ than previous projects?
Well, I mean, each project is unique and different, and talks to you in different ways, and but it's as exciting as any of the other films I've done, I guess. So it's different, and it's still, in many ways, I mean, it's a film that we all believe in, and yeah.
And it's been described as a feminist movie. Do you feel that it's a feminist movie? Is that how you would describe it? Either
Yeah,
one
I
of you?
mean, it is talking about women's issues, their independence, and also male allyship in that, where it's important for males to also, at this point of time, chip in and help this journey reach. I mean, hopefully we as a society can reach a place where we don't have
Opportunities are equal.
where opportunities are equal, where we don't put down people because based on their sex.
Yeah. And Kiran, it's like a road trip movie in a lot of ways. There's so many different scenes, and we're seeing them in all of these different situations. What was it like just to have that sort of a production design, and what sort of team do you have to build for that?
We had an incredibly good, experienced team behind the camera. A lot of the actors were first-timers. I mean, for my leads, it's their first film, though they'd done some work before. But but the my crew was very experienced. And for production design, actually, because we were shooting on all real locations, what was really important was to kind of scar these particular areas for the right spaces. So, and use a lot of what was real there, because our villages are quite, some of them not very much changed by time. So to find those villages that fit the film, since it's set 23 years ago. So for production design, actually, the important thing was to find the right locations. And then the production designer actually is from the central India, the heartland of India. So he brought a lot of his own personal experience and his, understanding of design, of cultural, sort of little nuances, like these paintings on the wall that they do in some parts of India when a bride and groom are coming home. We use that in many spaces in the film. It really helped us that we could shoot in some actually old villages that still have mud houses and cobblestone streets and, fields behind them, and still charming and old world.
Yeah, it's stunning to watch. I mean, it's visually beautiful, and it's so funny and heartwarming. And Kiran and Aamir, congratulations on a wonderful movie, and again being selected for India's choice at the 2025 Oscars. And good luck with everything. Thanks for chatting with Gold Derby.
Thank you.
Murderess is Greece's selection for Best International Feature at the 2025 Oscars, and I'm here with Eva Nathena, who is the director. It's your first feature film, so what an introduction to film. Talk about that and what that reception has been like for you to come out with such a bang.
Well, that was a huge, a big, large journey for me, because I worked for several years as a production designer in my country, and I'm well experienced in production designing, working in over 20 movies. But that was my very first feature directing. And actually, I had this attraction with this novel because my movie is based on a novel of Alexandros Papadiamandis, maybe the greatest writer in my country. And this novel was written in 1903, describing a women's position. And I first read it when I was at high school, at 16, at the age of 16. So you realize how long is this journey for me. And I felt a strange attraction to this character, to this heroine. And I got frightened because she was a woman that she was killing babies, girls. And I took a distance from this novel because of that fear I felt. But some years later, I had a deep confession of my mother, describing her traumas, her two deep traumas of dowry and of oppression. And I came back as an adult to read it again. And then I realized that it was not the actions of this character, of this heroine, that were familiar to me, but it was her traumas, that we are so familiar with my mother's traumas. So I felt an obligation to make a research. And I felt for years that this novel was not, I was not reading this novel. It was reading me, actually. It was giving me an insight of my mother's traumas and of my life. And I felt that I was so much related, with my own upbringing, and I felt that we are so conditioned with our upbringings, and we are our parents' continuation. So I felt this obligation to say this story of this heroine, like it was a memorial for my mother's life, because we lost her. She was young, and I felt that connection. This story was giving me an inspiration to express it, and I worked it as a production designer for years, looking in my dreams the ideal director who could ever directed this movie, and I was proposing this novel to many directors I admired, but it was, lucky me, it was fate to direct it, because my producers took that risk, and I should take that risk also. And here we are.
It shows a time period where women are so devalued, and we basically see them sort of being bartered like property for like pillow sheets at one point. So talk about showing that society, and it was these things really happened in that era. And the script was written by a woman. You directed it, of course, and the cast, a wonderful cast of mostly women. Talk about how all these women came together to make this beautiful film.
Well, this screenplay followed a very long process to be finalized, and we created something like 8 versions. And then I took it under my care in order to insert these visual aspects that were the part of my job, you know, as a production designer. And that was a moment that I realized all these historical issues and psychiatric and sociological issues, and I wanted to be sure that that was not a symbolic story that I thought till that moment. That was true. I mean, we had this historical moment it was a great revelation. We discovered a letter that it was sent 67 years before this novel was written. And it was sent from the island of the birthplace of this writer to the government, asking, the elders of this island were asking to the Secretariat of Justice, the government, to abolish this law of dowry in order to stop the newborn girls' murders. And you know, it took so many years for him to express these things in a novel, 67, and it took my country 1 century and more to abolish this law. And so many girls, newborn girls, were, you know, murdered. That was an infanticide, an unspoken dark chapter of our history. And I don't know, I felt it an obligation, like something like a duty to say this story, because unfortunately, this persists in many cultures till today. And I cannot live with this information. So, except the production designing and the directing, I tried to do my best in this movie in order to say what I had understood through my life, through my mother's life, and give this message to people, because there is so much gender inequality, you know, and so much abusing behaviors. I mean, women still have many women in the global population, and then, you know, my movie ends finishes with numbers of those women that are missing from the global population, and believe me, there are so many. It's unbelievable, but it's estimated, European Parliament estimated that in 2013 that more than 2 million women are missing from the global population because of gendercides. And this is
And you talk
very,
about the dowry laws just finally changed in Greece back in like it took to like the 1980s. So there, I mean, it was generations after
Yeah.
this movie took place.
yes. It was like I said, a very dark chapter in our history. But it's frightening that in some cultures that still persists. And I don't know, this is too heavy for us, you know? This is too heavy to know, and this is too heavy to carry. And something must be done for this. Let's say that this movie was made from women, yes, and for men, of course, for men. Also, we had such a great collaboration all together. I worked many years this production designing, making the storyboard. Every frame of this movie was sketched by me, and I knew what to do with the camera. I knew what to do with the sets, with the costumes. Of course, I didn't know what to do with the acting and you know, but I decided to take my path, my personal path, and I had studied. My studies was music and art. I mean, I studied a musician before 18, and then I went at the School of Fine Arts studying painting, and I took these two paths in order to teach people, to carry them my vision, my special vision.
And it
And
certainly
I
was
used,
a beautiful, I mean, it's a beautiful vision that you were able to get on the screen, and we're so happy that you were able to bring this and bring the attention across the world to this. And Eva, I want to thank you for joining our panel today and chatting with Gold Derby about your film Murderess.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Welcome to Gold Derby's Meet the Experts Film International Feature Panel. Our panelists are Pat Boonnitipat, director of Thailand's How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies, Filip Hammar and Fredrik Wilkingsson, directors of Sweden's The Last Journey, Kiran Rao and Aamir Khan, director and producer of India's Lost Ladies, and Eva Nathena, director of Greece's Murderess. Thank you all for joining me today. It's just a beautiful, diverse group of films, and I just want to start by asking each of you, what does it mean to represent your country at the Oscars, and what do you hope to represent for your country's cinema? Like, Pat, what does that mean to you? What do you hope to say about Thailand as a cinematic power?
Well, that's too much for me. I mean, I don't think I represent my culture at all. I think I just got lucky, and yeah, I'm just lucky, and it's my honor to be like seeing you guys here, all the representative of other countries, and I haven't seen any movie, but from the interview that I just heard, I think it's brilliant. I'll definitely check them out, and it's my honor to be here. Yeah.
And Filip, what about you? You get this documentary with your about you and your father, and now it's representing a country at the Oscars. How does that feel?
Well, I mean, I'm not thinking that much about representing my country, honestly. And it's not me being selfish or Fredrik either, I guess. It's more like I'm representing my dad almost. Like it's we've had a fantastic, unexpected run with this film where, you know, it become the biggest documentary of all time in Sweden. And we didn't expect that at all, but it's all thanks to my dad. So to me, it's every time I'm talking to you guys or we screen it, it's so weird, I guess, for Fredrik as well. Like, that guy, my dad, he's part of this little teacher who's like the least selfish human being there is. I'm just, that makes me proud. And then, of course, but representing a country is also hard because you feel it's a little embarrassing if, you know, the journey will end somewhere and you're like, they have some expectations. And so you better not think about that.
Kiran, what about you? Is there pressure? Is there pressure in this? You've done this before.
Yeah, Aamir has done this before. India was nominated 22 years ago on the film I first worked on, his film Lagan. So this is the second time, well, fourth time his film has been sent as India's entry. But yeah, for us, we make so many films in India, and there are
1,000 films.
a year, and honestly, there are lots of them that are very, very good. So it is an honor and privilege just to have been selected to represent our country. And honestly, it's we're doing our best.
And to be part of a group of films from all over the world, which are, each one is a beautiful film,
Yeah.
and each country sends their best film. So it's wonderful to be amongst all of you. And
It's so interesting, I have to say, though, we're 10 million people in Sweden. We're 10 million people.
You guys are cheating.
That's
Yeah.
our neighborhood.
that's our neighborhood.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. To represent your country is a very different thing. Representing India than our little corner of the world. Yeah.
Also, India is a film crazy country. The Indians love movies. So whichever film gets sent from India, all the Indians are really rooting for it. So that's a lot of pressure on us.
It is. Yeah, it is.
And
Well,
Eva,
we try
how's
our
this
best
been?
just to tell everyone back home.
Yeah.
And Eva, how has it been for you representing Greece?
Well, I feel lucky, of course, and blessed, but I don't know if I represent my country. Maybe I represent this writer that his novel was inspiring me for years. And of course, it's something like I represent my mother also. Thank you for saying this for your father, because my mother's story, that was the real inspiration for me. And I had this special premiere in my birthplace, the island of Crete, where in the theater I realized that it was, the audience was my whole life. I mean, it was my fellow students, my mother's relatives, my father's relatives, every person I ever related with. And that was the great moment. I considered this movie as a memorial to my mother's life, to my mother's traumas. And that was what we say, intergenerational traumas, that we have to know, we have to find out. And after this movie, I feel a stronger ring in this chain of life between my mother and my daughter. But it was after this movie. So I feel blessed anyway.
Aamir,
Each of the
oh, go ahead.
no, I was saying that I haven't seen the films either, but listening to each of a little bit about each film, each one sounds so interesting, and I'm dying to watch all your films.
We'll share a link with you.
Yes, please. I would like also.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Aamir,
Thanks so much.
You've been part of so many films. When you were growing up, what was the first movie you saw that was like movie magic, where you're like, I'm gonna be a filmmaker?
Oh no, I didn't have that moment when I watched my film. I was just a young kid. I remember it was a Laurel and Hardy movie.
Laurel and Hardy?
Laurel and Hardy. It was a comedy film, but because they were getting into trouble, I was a small kid, and I remember, they were being chased, or one of them, they were trying to get over a wall and they couldn't get over the wall. And I started crying. The rest of the theater was laughing, but I was crying. I was traumatized that they're going to get into trouble. So that was my first experience of watching a film.
Pat, what about you? When you were young, what inspired you to get into this business?
I wanted to be a movie director very late in life. I wanted to be, when it was in my university years. I had a chance to attend a film festival just to watch some film, and there's this Japanese movie by Naomi Kawase. It's called The Morning Forest, and it was screened in this festival, but there was something wrong, and the subtitle came out in Spanish. The movie was speaking Japanese and the subtitle was in Spanish, so I couldn't understand anything. But I just sat there until the end of the movie, and I just cried without understanding much they were talking about. So that's when I realized, oh, this is the power that I never experienced before. So that's the point of my life where I want to really to make a film that give the audience the same feeling.
What about you, Fredrik? How about when you think back?
I mean, we got to know each other. We were 20, I think, working at a newspaper, being writers, and there was a moment in the mid-90s of, independent cinema, where people made a lot of films that were actually in cinemas in Sweden, even though they were made in America for almost nothing. There was a movie called Clerks by Kevin Smith that cost, I don't know, $20,000 to make. And there was something about that, and then the Blair Witch Project a few years later, but it was like, it's because when we grew up, filmmakers were like you couldn't become one. That was what people was. But that whole moment of people making things creatively, but not being high budget, that was so inspiring. That got us started thinking about writing scripts and stuff because it didn't seem impossible.
And Eva, what about you? When did you discover movies as a kid? What was the first thing you remember?
Well, I remember. I remember. Actually, I cannot remember all these choices of my parents' choices. You know, of these movies that represent entertainment and blockbusters. You know, but I remember nothing of them. It was during my teenaging. I was a teenager when I discovered Andrei Tarkovsky, and that was a great revelation. And then Michael Haneke, and then Theo Angelopoulos, you know, the great Greek director, and that was a different world for me. And of course, it was during my whole life, it was a great inspiration. All these performances in with ancient drama in Epidaurus, that was a great, you know, school for me. And Papadiamandis, the writer that my movie is based on, got everything that he knew through ancient myths. So let's say that I always had this dream to reach these great directors through ancient myths, and that novel gave me this opportunity.
Yeah. And we were speaking before this a little bit, so maybe in these last few minutes we can just talk a little bit about, you know, what it means to be an international film and get your movie seen. We've talked about, like, even you spoken about not seeing each other's films yet. What is the biggest challenge in being seen and getting your films out there? And do you think the world's landscape is changing and being more accepting of international film? Because I feel like I certainly see more of it on streaming platforms now. So I feel like that it is becoming more broad, but what is the biggest challenge? And Kiran, I can start with you on that.
You know, interestingly, we made this film to start this conversation primarily in our own country with women, with you know, so society at large, because the film sort of touches upon so many issues. And the dream for us was to reach a global audience, because even though this film is set in a village in India, it speaks to, I think, struggles that women have worldwide, and it's entertaining, so it's accessible so that everybody can, you know, enjoy it as well. But like you said, the constraints of theatrical distribution mean that, you know, we did release worldwide, but a diaspora audience watches our films. So streaming has changed that for us. We are on Netflix, and so everyone can watch our film now, and I certainly hope they will. But again, the algorithms often work against international films. So unless you have watched something from India before, or you're interested in a certain kind of film, maybe mine won't show up. So those are some of the challenges, and actually representing the country on this global stage does help us get visibility and for people to know about the film and, you know, therefore watch it.
Yeah. And Pat, how has this been for you? Like, just even being selected as an Oscar submission, has that totally changed the visibility of your film?
Actually, yeah, maybe here in the US, I think, but we are very small film industry in Thailand, so we nominate our film every year, but none of them can reach much visibility. So, but yeah, I'm just lucky that this film got to be seen more than it used to be seen.
And Filip or Fredrik, you know, what is it like what is the film industry like in Sweden, and how do you feel like you're able to push this film internationally? Is it what are the hurdles you have to go through?
Once again, we're 10 million people. There's not a lot of money to be made, which also makes
we were actually we were walking the streets in New York a couple of days ago, and there was a, dare I say it, crazy woman screaming about God in the middle of the street, and nobody was paying attention to her. And I said to Filip, that's us trying to promote our film. If like that, that's very harsh, but I mean, I mean, you realize the competition is fierce. There's so much stuff out there. When you have a star in your film, people are going to turn up at screenings, and we have a small documentary. But I mean, I think it's the whole streaming thing is so inspiring because the potential to reach people is massive. But as you said, the algorithms is a bitch. So you just do what you can.
But there's obviously a lot to be said about streaming versus, you know, theatrical release. But I do have to say, at least if I look at myself, how I at least get in, you know, I see more international films. I mean, where I grew up in this small town, I don't know, they showed every year a few French films, maybe. They would, sadly enough, probably I don't remember them showing any Thai films or you know, Indian films even, and that's so I mean, this is, you know, now I think people just in general are more open to it. But it's interesting also because we've been you know, lucky enough now to make, you know, Universal Pictures will distribute our film. It's not on a big scale, it's an art house film, but the guy who found our film before we had, you know, just right before we got into real conversations with him, he sent us the trailer to your film, Pat, and he said, this is the biggest sensation in Asia this year. And he said, maybe there's a Swedish remake of this film. But I mean, that was to me, oh, I get into, because you know, I don't know that much about the Thai film industry at all, but I mean, just, I'm happy, and I hope all your films open in Sweden, or at least end up on some streaming platform where, you know, so Swedish people, I mean, it's all about how they promote the films, obviously.
Oh, actually, my film is going to be in Sweden like very soon.
Oh yeah, I see.
Yeah, it's going to be on theatrical release.
Yeah.
We'll be at the premiere. We'll be at the premiere, and we'll promote the film.
If you're there, we'll take you to dinner, man.
Okay, I will pay my ticket and I'll fly there.
Yeah, that's the problem. That we don't have the Indian budgets.
No.
And Eva, you've been in Los Angeles recently. Talk about your experience in bringing your film abroad and how much that's given you.
I feel just like you guys. I feel just like you. I mean, I come from a country where the population is 10 million also. So I took this special award in Shanghai Film Festival, and everything changed then. Until then, nothing was happening, you know. But I went to this special international film festival of Shanghai, and I got at the short list with 8 different directors, and we had this excellent workshop that was a present of the festival to us with Cameron Bailey, the artistic director of the Toronto Festival. And it was something like I wanted to cry and laugh at the same time, because everyone there was with a distribution company and with a sales agent, and I have nothing. And when it was my turn to speak, I expressed it, and Mr. Bailey said to me, yes, but you are here now and you have your chance. And he was right, because I took this big award of best direction, and that was my chance, yes, for my movie to be seen, you know. And I had other suggestions and in other international festivals, but that was a moment for me. And yes, something is changing. I mean, something is changing, because we see that at the same time that everything is marketing, and you know, we have to promote in another way our movies. Something is changing, because people are interested in personal stories, and this is great. I found it great to go on, and congratulations to all of you, all of us, because this is an honor to be here. And let's see.
Yeah.
We connected because cinema is our love. So when you love something, you follow it. You follow your dream, and that's it.
Yeah, well, certainly big congratulations to all of you. Once again, the films How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies from Thailand, The Last Journey from Sweden, Lost Ladies from India, and Murderess from Greece. I mean, good luck to all of you at the 2025 Oscars, and we'll be wishing you luck. Thanks for joining this international film panel with Gold Derby today.
Please connect us all. Please connect us all somehow.
Yeah.
We can see.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you guys.
Bye.
Sending you
Luck,
guys.
guys.